The two guys circled here are Brian and Ed Krasenstein. Don't worry about which is which. In February of 2024, they sat down in the InfoWars studio in Austin to have a debate with Glenn Greenwald, some guy named Darren, who was apparently too racist to stay employed by the Trump administration, and Alex Jones over the January 6th insurrection. The topic was January 6th an insurrection? And if you happen to watch it live, the answer is yes. These people tried to overthrow the fucking government. Whatever. Now, anyone who has two brain cells could tell you that this was a stupid idea because you just end up laundering the idiot talking points of people disconnected from reality. But the twins were unfortunately born. Oh, there's more to this. With a rare condition where they share a single brain cell. Even a half-drunk Alex Jones is better able to understand the purpose of this debate, and here we see him completely change the subject to push one of his conspiracy theories instead of address reality.
I think it depends how you ask that question. I would say no. It's not worse than Pearl Harbor or 9/11.
What are you basing on it? Are you basing?
No. I get it. Trying to take people's votes away is sacrosanct, but you're trying to take people votes from Trump.
There's it unprecedented that a president of the United States would do everything within his power to prevent the peaceful transfer of power to the next president.
He said, I want you to peacefully march down to the Capitol.
That is a uniquely horrible event.
So
the
horrible.
march to the Capitol, what was bad was him watching the riot happen for 3 hours and doing nothing.
No, it took him, it was the riot was happening. He spoke for an hour and a half. It started then. Then he got back to the White House, watched it like 30, 40 minutes, and then shot a video.
No, you're lying.
After this debate, Brian would take to Reddit, specifically the subreddit dedicated to the Knowledge Fight podcast, to try to defend himself and his brother for their incredibly shitty performance, where he revealed that he was paid $1,000 for this appearance and was promptly laughed out of the sub. I actually kind of wonder if they were both paid $1,000 or if they were paid $1,000 like cumulative dollars. I still want to know that one. Most people agreed that the Krasenstein's partner in this debate, the streamer Destiny, which this is going to sound stupid, he actually understood what was happening and clowned on his opposition rather than take their argument seriously. The question remains, who are these two and how did they get there? We're now into episode 5 of True Grift, where I, LazyFire, take a deep dive into scams, con men, and grifts. Today, I'll be telling you about people whose every tweet makes me want to cringe so hard that the protons and electrons of every atom in my body are forced out and I become a super dense ball of neutrons. I'm talking, of course, about the #resistance Twitter community. I delayed this episode several times, re-recorded this audio. I'll explain why. Largely because these people are very litigious. I wanted to make sure that I did not say anything that was out of line, that wasn't going to be an issue. I wanted to make sure I had all my research done because some of these sources are a little bit more difficult to come by than you'd think. So hopefully I've hit a point where I actually have everything I need. We're not going to run into problems. You're going to think that some of these topics kind of end a little unsatisfactorily, perhaps, but it is what it is. We'll get through this. I promise you. These people are all scammers. It's great. Well, it's not great. I mean, it's, a problem. Now, if you were blessed enough to have never heard of the #resistance area of the bird site, you should just really turn off at this point, honestly. Just maintain at least a little faith in humanity. If you have already had your mind melted by the absolute dumbest takes or are just, Ready to hear some stupid shit? Stick around. Resistance Twitter was an outgrowth of the liberal side of the Trump reply guy trend that started in 2015 or so. 2016 was really its heyday when he began running for the presidency and eventually won the nomination for the Republican Party. Brian and Ed were some of the first to get in on that train and some of the most prolific. A lot of these people used bots and pre-written posts in an attempt to be the first person to respond, or at least early in the chain. And the Krasensteins often got pole position and had their tweets circulate on other social media platforms and forums. Now, I have no idea why. I've never seen any of these people be funny or insightful, but liberals are a special kind of stupid, and so maybe that's why I don't get the jokes. Now, I guess because the first few episodes of this show focus specifically on things that are more conservative trends, like homeopathy and fake COVID cures and so on, it's easy to have pegged me as a liberal or a moderate, which, but either, When I think of a liberal, I think of Nancy Pelosi. She's constantly willing to meet the opposition on their terms, but not willing to demand real progress on important issues that matter to her constituents. Remember the time that climate change activists piled into her office to try to get her to do, anything about the climate crisis that she constantly talks about and acknowledges is real, and she just told them to fuck off? It's said that no one hates liberals more than leftists. And I have to agree with that. Anyways, that bit of housekeeping out of the way. The liberal I can't do that. Liberal reply, got it, guys, transitioned into a more organized set of posters after Trump's electoral college win in 2016. It just kicked off with a few different hashtags, like hashtag resist, hashtag the resistance, all one word, of course. Typically, it would be some statement like Trump's having plenty of executive time today, hashtag resist. Just fucking nothing statements that cluttered the feeds of anyone who didn't block these guys and gals when they were constantly posting at Trump. The Krasenstein posted at Trump so much that he blocked them, and they joined a suit to force Trump to unblock them on Twitter, and they won. These guys are annoying as fuck. I haven't bothered to look into their assessments of the situation, but I have to imagine that they just kind of claimed that Trump couldn't handle the harsh truths they were spitting or something to that effect. I have to say, when I see someone who makes bad posts constantly, I block them, so I can actually relate to Trump here. Now, the Krasensteins would eventually get kicked off of Twitter for manipulating likes and promotions, and then also start using one of their wives' Twitter accounts to post for years until they were allowed back on under Elon Musk. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about why they're grifters. You see, being annoying, it's not a scam. We can talk about how they parlayed their Twitter addictions into media appearances and drove traffic to their 2 news sites if we want to. But, you know what's more fun? I want you, the 50 people listening to this, I want you to guess what the Krasensteins and Trump have in common. It's not just that they both live in Florida. And yes, the Krasensteins are a single entity from here on out. When I say they or, whatever, they're just one person. They seem to live together as 40-year-olds. I don't know. It's very odd. They're like 42 or something like that. And they seemingly are in business together and also may live in the same house. And one of them's married. It's a fucking cult. I don't know. It just, whatever. Listen. Just guess what Trump and the Krasnostys have in common, because you never will. Okay. The thing that they have in common is both of them had their Florida residences raided by the FBI. You see, the Krasnostys had all this time to sit on Twitter and pay for bots because they had been running finance and investment websites since 2003, before they even graduated college. The main revenue driver for these sites was ad sales, and they sold a lot of ads. Ads for things that turned out to be Ponzi schemes and straight on take the money and run scams. In 2016, the FBI would raid several of the brothers' properties and walk out with phones, laptops, and just documents. They were never charged with actual crimes, and I want to be clear on that, but the FBI found cause to bring civil asset forfeiture cases against them that ended up reclaiming about $450,000. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't believe that civil asset forfeiture should be a thing. I believe that it is very much used to the detriment of regular people at such a high rate that we cannot trust any sort of law enforcement to apply that at a judicious and proper level. However, it was how the authorities took money back from Bernie Madoff when his Ponzi scheme fell apart. So sometimes there's a use for it. I just don't believe that it should be a thing that can be applied by, say, the local cops who take a bunch of money out of somebody's car at random. Anyways, now, the brothers will tell you that they actually warned their users away from scams and shady sites, but one of the ads they ran quite literally loaded a virus on users' computers that drained the accounts of those users on one of the online payment platforms that the twins themselves used and promoted. The FBI found enough probable cause that they had pending wire fraud charges against the Krasnostys for their promotion of high-yield investment programs on their sites. These sites were talkgold.com and moneymakergroup.com, which just sound like scams. Anyways, Brian and Ed were defiant when these charges were leveled. Eventually in 2018 was kind of where all this came to a head, saying that most of these programs are not scams, but the FBI disagreed and pointed out that nearly every one of them ended up being a Ponzi scheme where new investors provided funds for the early investors. 5 programs advertised or promoted by the Krasnostys sites were singled out as Ponzi's at one time by the FBI, by FBI complaints, 2 of which were so clearly run as scams that wire fraud convictions had been handed down for the owners. Okay. You know what's funnier? These scams had advertised on their sites back in 2012, 2013 timeframes, not even recent to when they were raided or charged. But they didn't get charged till 2016, and they didn't get raided till 2016. They didn't get charged till 2018 when Trump was in office. The grift was right there, guys. Say Trump took this FBI misunderstanding and sent his DOJ after you. Instead, they did everything they could to downplay these charges and likely just accepted the $450,000 wire fraud charge to avoid going to court or facing jail time. It's really weird to me that when we talk about these guys, we don't talk about the fact that they were found liable for fraud. We always talk about their political takes, they're getting kicked off Twitter, but these guys are actual charged for wire fraud dudes. Like, why are we listening to them? What we talk about instead when we talk about the Krasnostys is their subatomic. I can't read. It's just not a good day for this. What we talk about with these guys is we talk about their subatomic particle shedding level cringe-inducing children's book. Maybe that's why I couldn't speak, because I knew what this was coming up. How the people trumped Ronald Plump. I am a ball of neutrons. I have broken through my office floor, my dining room table, dining room floor, and I am quickly descending to the core of the fucking planet after saying that title. Reality has warped around me. Time is malleable. I hate these people so much. This story was written in the era where Resistance Twitter was obsessed with Robert Mueller. He appears in the book as a shirtless, six-pack abbed superhero, and I'm going to stop talking about this shit now for my own mental health and start talking about a different account obsessed with the former FBI director, Mueller, she wrote. Gotta say, the fucking the whole thing with that Ronald Plump book, just go look at some of the fucking pictures they used and some of the, you would think that AI art is better at this point, and this was before AI art was a whole thing. Anyways, when we talk about Mueller, she wrote, I have to say, I'm going to get fucking sued if she ever finds this video. I did a lot of research. This is part of what really slowed me down. Because she has threatened lawsuits against people in the past who talk about her past. You see, Allison Gill is a liar who decided to exchange a lifetime job in the federal government for Twitter fame. If you recall the insanity of the early Trump presidency, there was this whole, investigation into him and his campaign, possibly getting assistance from Russia in the 2016 election. Like, a lot of people were sentenced to jail time for lying to the government and to the FBI, who only ended up getting pardons from Trump before he left office. We're talking like Paul Manafort and so on, right? The investigation was read by Robert Mueller, or, again, I am hurtling towards the core of the fucking earth when I say this, but they legitimately called him, you see his name is Robert Mueller III, but they legitimately called this guy Bobby Three Sticks. I hate liberals so fucking much. Okay. As the investigation kicked off and early reports filtered out in 2017, one of the suddenly popular accounts was Mueller, she wrote, an incredibly crappy play on words based on the show best appreciated by the same people who loved Matlock. Why haven't we just remade Matlock? Allison was unqualified to provide any legal analysis because she's a fucking nobody. I mean, I'm a nobody, and there's like 50 people listening to this who had to hear me stumble over the word subatomic a couple of seconds ago. But, you're here. Congratulations. Sorry about that. But that's about the right level of attention that I should have. Like, I don't even think that a full room of people should have to listen to me talk about this shit. But here you guys are. Thank you. Anyways, Miss Gill had millions of followers at her peak, just taking any new Mueller news or rumors or anything like that and turning it into a smoking gun that would put Trump away for the rest of his life. When none of that shit happened after almost 2 years of investigation, and Attorney General Bill Barr basically said that Mueller had exonerated Trump of any wrongdoing. Now, he didn't, but, imperial presidency is going to imperial presidency. You'd think that the Mueller she wrote account would do the right thing and go silent. Oh. No. These people need attention, and Allison or her team posts to this day. Here's the thing about Allison. Almost nothing she's ever revealed about herself is true. And this is where her grifting kind of comes into play, right? In a now deleted Twitter thread by Freudian Slip, I should say, from June of 2023, her entire history is picked apart. The original poster was threatened with legal action, from what I can tell, but had pictures and proof showing just how busted the Mueller She Wrote lady was. And I don't mean that. I realize now that I read that back, that could sound like I'm saying that she was like unattractive. I don't make a judgment on that. I'm just saying that she lied a bunch. She lied that her grandfather died in World War II, yet he was somehow able to father her mother in 1949. Yeah, that's just normal stuff. You just lie about that occasionally. Allison herself would actually go on to serve in the Navy during the first Gulf War. Except she didn't. Allison didn't join the Navy until 1995 and dropped out after 9 months. You see, the words Gulf War era, veteran, were applied to basically anyone who enlisted for a number of years, so Allison lied by omission, but also abjectly, because she said she worked below decks during the war itself. She was in high school. She didn't join the Navy until years and years after she was 22 when she joined the Navy. Just wild stuff. Okay, so the Mueller She Wrote lady eventually gets a job in the Veterans Administration and starts a Twitter account years after that and accompanying podcast in 2017. In 2019, she goes on tour while still not being doxxed as Allison Gill at this point. She asked for sick leave to attend the shows by claiming her PTSD was being triggered by being in the office, an office she had worked in for over a decade. Yeah, she got fired and blamed it on Trump singling her out. This was after she was offered a relocation, and she rejected it, and accommodations that she also rejected. Just fueled this victim narrative. She still to this day will tell you that Trump was the reason she got fired. Now, this 2019 tour, this is very important. It was probably the year for her to just break from real work anyways, because she won a Webby Award and made nearly $500,000 between ads and online donations. Like, I've said it before that I'm not monetizing this series or channel or whatever because I have a real job. But if you told me that I could just pretend to be some sort of guru on Trump stuff online and double my MBA wife's salary by saying words into a podcast microphone, I would be making a fucking tier list of the Trump children on a live stream so fucking fast. Seriously, this woman has no idea what she's talking about. And the fact that she would later go on to get a $52,000 PPP loan to protect her way too online business. It's just insanity. There's a lot more to Allison's lies and grifts, but everything I've mentioned so far is public record and easily traceable. Getting into her messy personal life where she lies a bunch about a series of other things is likely what got others into trouble, and I'm not going to touch it. Definitely am not going to suggest you go to pingthread.com/1664953643777523712. That would send you down a rabbit hole of things that could totally be true based on documentation that Allison may dislike. Hey, so you probably noticed that the tweet on screen is from Jeff Tiedrich. I don't think he's a grifter. He's just fucking embarrassing. He was an original Trump reply guy like the Krasensteins and became a resistance guy after. He fucking sucks. Rereading this tweet has sent the ball of neutrons I've been converted to through the core of the planet, and I'm currently in space aimed at Jupiter. His daughter makes webcomics that aren't that bad. I don't know. I hate liberals. I figured this was a fun tweet to put up there. Now, when we talk about resistance Twitter, we need to talk about Mary Trump. Mary is the niece of Donald Trump, and in 2020 became a minor celebrity leading up to the release of her Too Much and Never Enough book. It's her perspective of Donald Trump's life. Back when the Daily Beast had podcasts and wasn't like a shell of its former self because it's made a bunch of seriously bad decisions over the years, she was a frequent guest on about, I don't know, all of them. She was the Donald Trump decoder that they'd bring out all the time. One of those people who had some level of insight on the guy and was highly valued because of that access from 20, 30 years ago. She fucking sucks. I know as much about the guy as she does at this point, and I don't even have cable, like a cable subscription, right? Donald needs to be praised. Oh shit. Thanks, Mary. I hadn't figured that out in the fucking decade I've had to deal with the guy now. Are we gonna be told that his skin tone is orange because he spray tans next? Like, what are we fucking doing here? You can completely ignore anything Mary Trump has to say about Donnie. She shot her wad in 2020 and is somehow pretending she has anything to contribute in 2024. Just somebody who's trying to make $1 off of disliking Donald Trump. I don't really have any respect for somebody who just does that and doesn't really provide any information. I did mention the Daily Beast in that last paragraph. Totally by mistake. Kinda. Do you know who worked for the Daily Beast from 2016 to 2020? It was Rick Wilson. You know, the guy with the Confederate flag plastered cooler, the guy who worked for multiple Republican presidents and on other campaigns over the years, who founded the Lincoln Project with a bunch of other dudes, it's always dudes, who didn't get jobs in the Trump administration. Gotta talk about him. Unlike the other people I've mentioned previously, the Lincoln Project is all conservative stars of yesteryear who were really hoping to have like Ted Cruz win the Republican nomination for the 2016 election so they would get to push their shitty policies, forever. When Trump won it, it was an apocalyptic event for them. Rick formed a coalition with Stephen Schmidt, George Conway, and very importantly, John Weaver, to build a Republican Never Trump organization that only really existed to raise money for their cause. And their cause was to give money to themselves. We'll talk about that in a second. One of the major promises of the Lincoln Project was that they would work to unseat pro-Trump members of Congress. That just never actually materialized. As a matter of fact, you can listen to Rick Wilson promising opposition research on members of Congress, specifically Louis Gohmert, that never materialized. If you hate yourself enough to listen to archived Daily Beast podcasts, which are some of the worst produced on the internet, I digress. The point of the Lincoln Project was to create ads to make people think a more moderate version of the Republican Party still existed somewhere. Mostly because a few people didn't get the jobs they wanted after the 2016 election. It was absolute insanity. George Conway specifically expected to get hired as some sort of attorney in the White House, and then when he didn't, started working with these other guys. His wife obviously worked for, Kellyanne Conway worked for Trump for his entire presidency. Now, the aforementioned John Weaver is an amazing example of just the weirdest dude. He was kicked out of the organization in 2020 due to systemic harassment of staffers within the org. Because of the suits launched against him and these accusations that we know of as of June 2020, at least. So, let me take a step back. All of the suits that were launched against John, because of the discovery process, we know that as of June of 2020, when you would think that the Lincoln Project, this anti-Trump group, would be putting as much money as possible towards unseating President Trump, right? They spent at least $50 million of the $90 million that they had raised in the existence of this project on firms that were directly controlled by the founding partners. The Lincoln Project was just a way for the people at the top to line their pockets. Nothing more, nothing less. The less I say about this, the better. There's always more information coming out about how bad they are. And they'll occasionally post to Twitter now and tell you that, hey, we can't have this guy or that guy, or we can't have Donald Trump in office. But at the end of the day, they just really want somebody that they can control to be in office. And they have no purchase with Democrats. They have no purchase with the MAGA world. They're just very mad, and they're trying to get as many dollars out of this whole resistance thing as they can. That's all they are. So only a couple more here, just going down the list. Have you ever seen the tweets from the Brooklyn Dad Defiant account over the last few years? If you said no, good for you. Your brain remains intact. He's a random guy. He's living in Brooklyn. May have a child or two. I don't know. He somehow rose to enough prominence that he earned a blue check on Twitter when that meant that you were popular or famous or something like that, rather than you paid $8 a month to one of the world's stupidest men. He's literally just a guy. There's nothing special about him. But he made over $100,000 a year for his account because the Democratic National Committee pays him to post. I'm downplaying his income here. Imagine being a guy who just says, I can't wait for the orange man to be in jail on Twitter every couple of days, and making greater than the average U.S. family income for doing so. This is, I think, kind of one of the greatest examples of a grift or a misunderstanding on how anything works. It's just, this guy doesn't have anything. He just posts. Why are we listening to this guy? I'm not delving too deeply into any of these people beyond what you've heard for the first few subjects, because they tend to have money behind them and their teams look at what people say about them. A lot of them are extremely online and may find this video with that because they're the kind of people who just search their own names. They're all obsessed with being popular online, and I think most of them, if you go and look, probably wrote their own Wikipedia pages. The Krasensteins probably not so much, because they do mention the whole FBI raid thing. So I feel like somebody came in and was like, oh yeah, I got to make sure that everyone knows this happened. Because I literally had no idea until I started doing research on them for this thing. And had to go and check all the court records and all that shit. But anyways, liberal grifters are far less common than their conservative counterparts, but are just as stupid. You could look at a Krasenstein tweet and find the same structure as a Jack Posobiec or a Dan Bongino tweet. They just want attention and have found a way to draw a couple of dollars from writing whatever topic is trending. Like if you threw every person I mentioned in this episode down a well and sealed the top, would the world be any different? No. I mean, more oxygen for the rest of us, but because everyone I talked about in this episode is powerless and just pretends to have clout or insight on topics the general public thinks are important. What do the Krasensteins know about legislation? What does Allison Gill know about federal prosecution? What did the Lincoln Project people know about anything in the government when they were locked out after 2016? Brooklyn Dad Defiant and Jeff Tetrich are just literally some guys who post things. Why is anyone listening to these people? Every one of them are grifters trying to make a buck off doing nothing but posting on the internet. It's amazing stuff. It's what you might want to call the Fox Newsification of the media. Go on Fox, go on CNN, go on MSNBC, watch the evening news, whatever you want. Most of the time when you go on these sites, you look at these things, half the shit that they have on their screen is somebody tweeting something. And right now, that kind of feels how things are. Now, I already talked about Alex Jones in the early part of this episode, but this is I think one of the more important factors, he is one of the more important factors in why these people have any purchase whatsoever. Because back in the late 90s, when Alex was really kicking off, you didn't have the citizen journalism that you did in the early 2000s and the late 2000s, especially when you had blogs and everything like that kicking off. And you had this series of people who did not have qualifications. They didn't have ties to the major news sites or anything like that. They just put stuff online. And occasionally, I mean, a lot of what we know about Occupy Wall Street and so on, and things that we know about some of the Black Lives Matter protests years later in 2020, we know that because we had people who were on the ground watching these things who may not have media credentials at all, may not have any aspirations to be in the media. And we have, for better or worse, democratized some reporting and some of our analysis to people who have no qualifications, no business talking about these things, and it has made us worse for it. And there is always going to be space for people like this, like the Krasensteins, like Allison Gill, like the Lincoln Project, to step in and start acting like they have some sort of authority or some sort of insider knowledge, despite the fact that they don't. You just have to hit the right buttons, talk about the right things, hit the right trends, and you can go on. It's AI and algorithms and all this other fun stuff that's really causing this problem where I can't go online right now. That as I'm recording this, there's this entire thing that some right-wing account posted that during the Trump-Biden debate that's coming up, as like I said, as I'm recording this, the Trump-Biden debate that's coming up, Biden's going to be sitting down. He had requested this, and that's how it's going to be. CNN immediately came back with, no one requested that. They're going to be standing. What are you talking about? And as they were debunking this statement, CNN being the host of the debate, Fox News had people on their show stating that Biden would be sitting down because he had requested that from the debate as part of the demands for a debate to be had. This is insanity. There was no authority behind the person who started that rumor, and yet it persisted. And when you wonder why it persisted, it's because we have an ecosystem now where it is just people grabbing stuff, reporting it, copying it, bots picking it up, and forcing stuff to the top of the algorithm because we just don't have control over what is real and what isn't. The resistance Twitter people are a problem and a menace because they get people to start believing that Robert Mueller was going to jail Donald Trump like 2 weeks into the investigation. I think we all knew that that wasn't going to happen. Anyone with any sense knew that wasn't going to happen. There was always going to be less repercussions for him than anyone else. And there was always that threat that he was going to have to actually have, like, there's no way that they were actually going to send a president to jail off of recommendations from a special counselor at that point. Just, that was never going to happen. And people bought it. People posted her shit all over the place. They still do. And she doesn't have any qualifications. Jack Posobiec is a guy who promoted Pizzagate and got famous off of it and had to walk it back because he was so wrong that he got threatened with so many lawsuits and cried about it. I mean, just, why do you listen to these people? Dan Bongino, the guy I mentioned just now, he's a right-wing grifter, but as is Jack, but Dan Bongino was a Secret Service agent. What does he know about the current presidency? What does he know about government now? He doesn't. He doesn't know anything. These are just people posting on the internet who got an audience somehow. And it's just, I don't know. This has gone on longer than I intended it to. Largely because I just don't like these people in general. But, like I said, ball of neutrons level cringe from these guys, just firing off every electron and proton in my body to to become a super dense ball of space-time warping material, because it's just, they're so sad. They're so bad at this whole thing. And I would rather exit this world as a super dense mass than deal with another Krasenstein tweet in my life. Hey, so after all that talk about posting on the internet, I do have an idea for an extended series after this. I know that I said the COVID series would take a break and all, and that's going to come back eventually, but have you heard of a guy called Fat Leonard? He's been on the list for this series from day one. I'm wondering if I should cover the topic like early on and get that out of the way or not, but we'll see. I do want to talk about some other stuff. It'll take a few episodes. Let me know. Those who actually listen all the way through on these. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for dealing with the fact that I took way too long to get back to this. Thanks for sticking around for that extended rant at the end of this episode that pushed this thing over the 40-minute mark. Look at that. Anyways, wow. Maybe I should complain about liberals more often. Everyone tells me to stop doing that, and they hate me for it. But whatever. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.